What's up, y'all? Shuffle. And today's video is a recap of the first year of Darkest Dungeon 2. It is this game's birthday, so happy birthday, DD2 and Red Hook and all the players that have stuck through it. And I'm going to use this time to recap how the game was when it came out and where we're at now. So we got the blog updates and some chronological order, also show appropriate pics or footage or whatever as needed. But we're gonna go kind of quickly over these just to make sure that we're all up to date on what's happening. So, game came out a year ago, October 26, 2021. And when it dropped for that, you probably played it for a couple days, maybe a week, and you're like, wow, Ounce of Prevention is busted. Game, LOL, too easy for me. And I am done playing it. Okay, so that's where a lot of people were. And a lot of us have also stuck it out and kept going. So we've been seeing all the updates, and there's been a lot of good changes. So we're going to talk about those. This was the roadmap that they initially released. This was back in January. This thing does not apply anymore. And they got rid of this pretty quickly, I'd say, and that's just because they responded to feedback. A lot of things I hear people talking about that I don't agree with is that they say, oh, Red Hook doesn't listen to feedback, they don't care what their players think, and they literally made the early access period to get feedback. People say we hate the progression system, it got changed. People say we want the game to be harder, they made it harder. They said we want relationships to go. They're fixing them. That one's taking a bit, so we'll talk about that. But they always put out surveys and they look at the feedback channel and they talk in their own Discord to people, and they're really receptive. So when people say they're not listening to feedback, no, they are. They're probably not listening to your feedback. So you need to understand that there's a difference, Like, you want the game to be DD 1.5, that's Black Reliquary, go play that, If you want Darkest Dungeon 2, you're playing this. So, I gotta get off my soapbox there, but the roadmap, this is gone. We made it pretty much to, like, 3, for the most part. They gave us this one. This is when the roadmap was first made. So this was Beasts and Burdens. This was the first update. We can talk about that. And then the second update was Shroud of the Deep. So we got a new region and a second boss, or second mountain boss, and some story stuff, permanent upgrades. I don't know if this was initially supposed to be paths or not, but they put in paths pretty quickly. So some of the things that were added to the game weren't on here, and some of the things were, and some of it got pushed back, which is why this roadmap just doesn't really apply anymore. But some other things of note, this extra region, I'm pretty sure this got scrapped, and that's just because there are other changes they wanted to make, and they wanted to shore up the foundation of the game to make that really good. And judging by the new region question marks, I'm pretty sure they had really nothing here yet. Like this Barnacle and Crescent region thing, talking about the Shroud, I'm pretty certain they had the Shroud at least planned before they got here, and this one got scrapped. So the things they did talk about, or I should say the current roadmap, so this was from a blog post back in May. I don't know if this is the most current one of these. I think it is. This looks like it's the current one. So they for their unofficial roadmap, they had trinket improvements, third hero paths, they did that. Cultist reinforcements did that. New progression system, first hero, it was Bounty Hunter, they did that. Act 3 Confession boss. This is not here yet, but if we're going on this is likely next. But after that, Act 4 Confession, relationship rework, second hero, collector mini boss, driving improvements, third hero, secret mini boss. We have no idea what this is. Pets, skins playable, Act 5 Confession boss, and more. We don't know what that is, but the game is supposed to release officially in February of next year. Can they get all of this done in 4 months, maybe. They usually put out one update a month at this pace. And I think once they're done with the reworks and stuff like that, and they're just focusing on content, that probably goes kind of quickly. So hopefully, you know, I don't know, but this is where we're at here. And yeah, so we're gonna have 2 more heroes, a couple reworks, and some mountain bosses. That's where we're at. While you were gone, the Beasts and Burdens update came out. This was adding creature dens and hero paths to the game and the Oasis. So creature dens, a location you go to, you fight 2 waves of these monsters, so dogs, spiders, and worms. And you get a pretty good reward, although it is a difficult encounter. So it's risk and reward, but the reward is something you carry to the next inn. You get mastery and then various other effects like cure your diseases, training prices are cheaper, etc. Hero paths, these are specializations. This has been pretty mixed. When they came out, it was fun because, you know, something new. And then as the game went on, the paths themselves showed themselves to be problems. And once they kind of became problems because, you know, a lot of them were just bonus damage and it was a lot of damage and stuff. And it just really put the game into a bad balanced state, I would say. For anyone wondering what that sound was, Echo fell off of something, but he is okay. So he was chasing a fly, and now he is outside while I finish recording this. But yeah, so paths kind of really messed up the balance of the game in the long term because of their damage and what they could do. It made Wanderers not fun to play because I was just the base class. The paths themselves were random. So they would just pop up at the crossroads, you picked your heroes then. It was not a fun system, and that has changed. You can now pick your paths when you pick your heroes, and also they have been toned down in terms of power level. They're still much stronger than Wanderers, which is an issue, but as it is now, it's in a better state than it was. So it is a nice and good change. The paths they talk about here, Apprentice and Master, those are gone. Oasis, this is a location where you go there, your heroes can stress heal, or you get mineral spring water, which is a consumable that heals stress in combat. So these were the new additions for this patch. The game was still pretty lacking at this point because we got some content, some like stuff no one really asked for at this point, like the creature den, the paths, the Oasis. You know, people wanted better stress healing, and then an inconsistent node that not all your heroes want to use was not a good answer. But outside of that, they were putting this out while they were fixing other things. And so I'm not trying to be all doom and gloomy. There is an upside. Like the game, you know, I'll cut to the chase. The game now is better than it's ever been. It is fantastic. It is a joy to play. They just need to fix a couple more things and add some content, and then it should be ready. But yeah, game's still not in a great spot at Beasts and Burdens. Shroud of the Deep, game in a really good spot at Shroud of the Deep. So they added the water, aquatic, coastal region, the Shroud, and they added a new enemy faction, which are fishmongers or fisher folk, I think they're called. And it is reminiscent of the Shadow over Innsmouth, if you ever read / heard that Lovecraft story, but it definitely has those vibes. Guess I'll spoil the boss in a way. It's reminiscent of Dagon. So when the Shroud came out, we got chapter 2, so we got a new mountain boss. And one of the ongoing complaints is that nothing has really changed between chapters besides the Ordainment. So Ordained monsters, there's a lot of text here. Basically, Ordained monsters are just stronger versions of regular monsters. They have a increase of HP, damage, resist, secondary effects, maybe not resist, but like damage over time lasts longer if they apply it to you, stuff like that. So there's a lot going on with these, and the other bonuses change by confession. So whatever chapter you're doing, you get different effects from Ordainment. This was a great change. One of the big issues the game had initially was that all the difficulty was front loaded, so the hardest part of the game was the beginning. And if you were able to get through the beginning, get a couple mastery points, get some trinkets, you were fine after that. But they added the Ordainment to give us a more normal level of power scaling, and then also added a cultist boss at the end of the third region to really try and make that where the majority of the difficulty is, besides the final boss. So it's more of a traditional linear power scaling than it was before, where all the difficulty was front loaded and then the game got easier. So it goes the other way. It's pretty easy at the start, then it gets harder as you go. Unless you do a lair in the first region, that's still pretty difficult. So when this came out, like I said, Ordained monsters, new mountain boss, this was a huge patch, new zone with a bunch of enemies, and then new music, absolute bopper of a battle soundtrack, and then also the food redesign. So food now raises your max HP instead of just healing you. So you go to the inn, you can stock up on some food that you have, give yourself bonus HP for the next region alongside secondary effects, and the game is very much balanced around this. So hero HP got cut as a whole, and you have food to offset that. It even says right here. So HP was lowered by 10%, and then it was further lowered for some heroes because of the Altar of Hope. We will talk about the altar in depth here in a minute. That's gonna be the end of the video for the most part. So other various balance changes to nodes, UI, stuff like that. But we're looking at content besides various balancing and stuff. We, like I said, new food design, ordained monsters, new region, new boss, driving improvements, all that was welcome. This was a very, very good update for the game. So once this update came out, I think even a lot of the detractors, it was much easier to be hopeful for the future of the game, because, you know, when it came out, it's like, okay, this is a cool idea, but there's, you know, these glaring issues we need to fix, and they've been doing their best to fix them as time has gone on. But once this came out, once the Shroud came out, it was like, okay, they can really make these incredible just moments in the game, or add this fantastic content that is very fun to play. And so I was like, okay, they just need the time, but they can do it. And so I think myself personally too, this was a big turning point. Trinkets and baubles. People complained about the trinkets and how they did not have enough downsides for what they did, and a lot of them were just kind of plain or just not fun or interesting. So they redid all of them. I'm pretty sure there's over like 100 trinkets in the game. They went through and they redid all of them. Most of them have significant downsides, and it's not just something like plus stress. You know, it's if you go first during a turn and you miss, you know, you give the enemy a crit token, like that kind of stuff. Just really wacky risk and reward stuff. And there's still some more balancing that needs to be done, I would say, but for the most part, this was also a very great content patch because it just made trinkets fun. And now there's a lot of interesting stuff you can do with them. They're finally starting to augment abilities in ways that they didn't before. You know, instead of just being like plus 10% damage. That trinket's still in the game. But besides those effects, now we have things like when you hit an enemy, you have a 33% chance to blight it. You know, just like Crushed Hemlock from the previous Butcher's Circus. And so they made trinkets really fun in that regard. They change how characters operate, they change play styles, they synergize with some paths and not others, and it was very good. So once, you know, that's too much to talk about, so they put that in the game, and heroes got a third path. All of these paths, outside of Aspirants and maybe Orphan, were the weakest ones these characters got, except Bulwark too. So Vanguard is now what Bulwark was, where it's like the bonus damage on Crush and stuff like that, and Bulwark became a shield focused path. But Venom Drop, Weakest Grave Robber one, Carcass, weakest Hellion one, Yellow Hand, probably weakest, Highwayman, Intermezzo. Is solid, just, you know, a bit wonky to work with. Monarch needs some help. Aspirant is probably the best occultist path, it's very strong. Physician's good. Orphan was the best path until Arsonist got reworked. Taking got nerfed, like I said, various. Hero balancing, they eventually nerf things like Howling End on Hellions, so it's not as dominant of a playstyle as it was. You know, Take Aim got nerfed, Retribution and stuff got nerfed for Man-at-Arms, so there's been various balancing, and some things got buffed. Like Runaway. Was it this patch? Believe it was this patch. Like, Runaway got buffed in 3 straight patches. This was a huge one for her. And then later on, she got another buff from a patch where she became very, very good. So. Otherwise, these were good updates. So now at this point, we have some reworks. We have new region, new final boss, stuff like that. And really fun. Very, very fun time. However, still not the best we've seen. Oblivion's Ingress, this was a relatively small patch. This just added some new cultist enemies and a bunch of changes to trinkets and heroes and stuff. And the big thing here was Exemplar. So all of the cultist mashes got new enemies potentially. There was Herald and Altar. They are backline units that are pretty disruptive. Altar is a jerk. It's a very support-oriented cultist unit, and usually the first thing you're trying to kill in every fight. And then finally, they added Exemplar. So Exemplar is a cultist boss, so to speak, and it appears guaranteed at the end of the 3rd region. It is a difficult fight. It is harder than any of the layers at Biome 3, and it's on par probably with the mountain boss, depending on how comfortable you are with the fights and what your team is. It is dangerous, it is tough, and if you max out your loathing, it can show up as a road encounter, so you have to be very careful about that. Make sure you're taking fights to lower your loathing. But this was another great update. Altar of Hope. So this one added Bounty Hunter and a new progression system. So this is what I'm going to show you with the actual game. So I'm queued up here at the altar. This thing is so just fun and great and awesome. This is the one I have on my current file. So it starts out looking like this, where it's all just this weird, foggy, uncolorful, you know, distant memory, so to speak. And you get candles, which is a new currency, as you can see here. Actually, I can move my camera, don't I? Let me see. Actually, let's go all the way here. So with the candles, use these on upgrades. So if you go into, like, for instance here, basically have a slot machine so you can unlock new stuff. This is how you get your trinkets and new items and stuff. All of it has just been put into the altar. And when you put more candles in here that you get from beating the game, doing various challenges, they start to restore to what they used to be. And then when they're finished, they look like this, which is really cool. And each of these seems to be based off a region in the game. So we have the Fields is probably the Fetter. We have the Living City, this is the Sprawl. The Timeless Wood, this looks like the General's Keep. And then the Intrepid Coast is the Shroud. But each one has its own batch of upgrades that you get to spend currency on, and they do all kinds of crazy cool stuff. Some of it's pretty, you know, flat, but necessary, like inventory increases, stagecoach slots, your wagon skins, they're all here. Infernal Flame was down in the altar. That's how they reintroduced its resourcefulness. This makes your shops and stuff better. There's a lot going on. I made 2 different videos on it, and I can link them if you are so inclined to learn more about it. But this is when the game has become as amazing as it is now. So when it came out, you know, big hype wave, really fun stuff. And then after, you know, some time passed, couple weeks, a month or 2, the game really started to show its flaws, and ever since then they've been on top of trying to fix all of it. They take in the feedback that they get. They always make sure to communicate now, which is good. You know, instead of these, hey, you know, update coming tomorrow or in like 6 weeks or something like that, they actually are pretty good about timing their press releases and what content is in there to show us. But yeah, so the altar, this is the best the game has been. Lots of cool features. Memories make your heroes permanent and stuff, and then all of your other upgrades. You know, you can unlock the heroes this way, so you get to pick who you want instead of having to go in order. There's no more profile levels. That's just gone. That whole system's gone. And now you get currency and restarts that way. So if you took a break from the game and you already have it and you want to come back and check it out, this is probably the best time to do it, because it's a fresh profile for everyone and everyone is starting over. So everyone gets to, you know, learn it and go together, and it's pretty fun to see and talk about. I like, for instance, going into other streams, and I like seeing how they spend their candles. You know, if they don't have a maxed out profile, I like to see what upgrades they're buying, because it's interesting, you know. People go different ways. But otherwise, that is where we're at now. So we have Bounty Hunter, new progression system, tons of extra content, updates, balance reworks, things we are missing. Probably the biggest thing that we're missing besides, you know, just content is the Affinity system rework. That is the relationship rework. There's not been any discussion on when it's coming. There's been no insights as to what they're changing. We're just hoping it's soon, because that is really the last glaring hurdle the game has. The relationship system has many issues, and they haven't really told us what they're doing with it yet. But I'm excited to see it, and I do have faith that they're going to do a good job. And the reason is because when they're going to do the progression system, we got the altar. The altar looks fantastic, right? They just added so much cool stuff. It's fun to do. It's fun to use. It looks great. Like, you know, the fact that it upgrades and, you know, changes color, and I've seen what the completed one looks like. You know, the mountain changes. There's just all this cool stuff that they didn't have to do. You know, just even the graphics, like little icons you can add, and when you, where is it? You know, when you buy stuff, it's got these little outlines. Like, it didn't need to do all this, you know, but it did. So I'm hoping they apply that same love and care to the future updates. But everything I've seen has gotten me excited for the future. I really do have high hopes for this game. You know, a lot of us complain about the balance and various mechanics of the game, but the thing that's really been standing out is the art and the narrative. The art team has been absolutely crushing it, and I'm not trying to take away from all the people working on the various balancing and stuff. Like, they're working just as hard, but the art was interesting, because when the game was coming out, everyone was saying, or a lot of people were saying, they didn't like the new art direction. They were wondering how it was going to look, and then we got the trailer and we saw how they animated, and that was fantastic. And ever since then, I've just heard no art complaints. You know, I like to think of myself as someone prominent in the community in terms of just being present. You know, I talk to a lot of people. I'm in, you know, Red Hook's Discord. I have a stream where a lot of people drop in at, and so I don't see art complaints anymore, and that's cool. So hopefully they nail down the gameplay aspects. It still has some hurdles to go through, like I said, Affinity and stuff, but also the game is being kind of pulled in two directions. It's got the roguelike aspect, and then also has the meat grinder, you know, RPG aspect. So it really has to pick where it's gonna land on. You know, the runs themselves being like 4 hours, if you know what you're doing, is too long of a time. Hopefully they shorten that even more. But, you know, with the other roguelike things they can do, they could add different run challenges, modifiers, whatever. Like, the sky's the limit for the foundation. They just have to take the time to do it. But otherwise, game looking fantastic. Very impressive year. Excited to see the full release. And I hope that if you do have the game already and you took a break and you wrote it off or whatever, consider coming back. You know, this is the best time for it. And also, if you're considering buying the game and you don't want to wait for Steam, use code Shuffle at checkout at the Epic Game Store. Yeah. And that's it for the video. So thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.